Chapter 1. But before we do, whether you're going to make history, a career or whatnot, or if you're going to continue to study other history classes, there are a couple of things, just to kind of make you a bit more familiar with things and perhaps make things a little bit easier. And so I have it written up here, just a couple of terms. They're not necessarily part of chapter 1, not yet, but they will help, okay? Now, the things that we're doing in chapter 1, or at least the first part of chapter 1, you'll notice your textbook on occasion will describe things as prehistoric, all right? Or maybe you've heard the term prehistoric. All that means is that these events happened before the invention or creation of writing, okay? And yes, it literally means before history, but that's not because, history only started, when people began to write it down, but that was kind of the meaning. But anyways, the term has lasted, okay? So, how do we know about events if they happened before people wrote them down?
Things that were left behind, artifacts.
Okay, number one, artifacts. Okay, so we have like archaeological digs, and we have like old cities and old things. Okay, what else? What are we doing right now?
Talking.
Yes,
history.
Oral histories. Okay, and of course, eventually, when writing became a thing, people wrote down those oral histories. Of course, what is the problem with an oral history?
It changes over time by word of mouth.
Yeah, if you've ever played the telephone game, I could tell. I want to say Josie. You know Josie? Okay, Josie here. My sister's name is Josie. Nobody called her Josie. All right, so Josie here. I could tell her the sky is blue, and by the time it gets over here, it's, Mr. Santos is stupid. All right, so where along the way that changed, okay? And of course, that's what we have. So a lot of these things, from artifacts, from oral histories that may have changed and weren't written down until the invention of writing, which was around about 11,000 years ago. Okay? Yes, there's a lot of things that, honestly, we're taking our best guess. Okay, number one. Number two, okay? And if you've been in school, you guys have been in school since, kindergarten, preschool, whatever, okay? There are some history books that will give certain dates with the terms BC and AD, okay? And it's okay if you don't know this. Question?
I feel like I should wait. But I know
Okay. What does BC, does anyone know what BC means?
Before Christ.
Before Christ, okay? Now this one's a little harder. What is AD?
It's I can't pronounce it. It's Latin. It's like
It is Latin, okay?
After death.
Okay, I was going to say, a lot of people think it's after death. Not really, even though it makes sense, it's not really. It's in Latin. It's Anno Domini, which literally means the year of our Lord. Okay? Now, most history books and most historians now are trying to get away from that because it is very Christian-centric, obviously, before Christ, and then Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, in this case referring to Jesus as the Lord, okay? And is most of the world Christian? No. I mean, you may think so, like, yeah, everybody. Well, maybe in the U.S., maybe in New York, maybe wherever. But once you get to other parts of the planet, Christianity is a very small minority. Okay, so we're trying to get rid of that Christian-centric terminology, and most of your history books now all right, use the terms BCE and CE, okay? BCE refers to before the Common Era, and CE is the Common Era, okay? And so basically, if it used to say BC, all right, now it says BCE, and if it used to say AD, now it says CE, okay? But those are the equivalents, okay? Because every now and then students will ask, right? Of course, we're still basing it on the birth and life of Jesus, even though we just use different terminology. So we still have a ways to go, okay? Now, the last thing, and something you will notice, once again, in your history books, sometimes it will give you years, sometimes it will describe certain decades or whatever, but every now and then you'll get terminology like this: the 16th century, the 18th century, the 21st century. Just to make it really quick and easy, all you have to do is subtract 100, okay? So the 16th century, we're talking about the 1500s, okay? The 18th century, we're talking about, what would it be?
17?
Yeah, we're talking about the 1700s. And so for today, we are in 2024, okay? People will call this the 21st century, okay? But once again, what year is it?
20.
Yeah, so it's not 2124, all right, it's 2024, okay? So now you're all amateur historians, okay?
Why do they do that?
To confuse students. No, I don't know. In this case, it's a little bit more proper to refer to it as, the whatever century, as opposed to,
Why do you have to subtract 100?
because there's no zeros. That's also why, when you do calendars and things like that, there's no minus, there's a -1, but then there's no year 0, then it goes right into 1. And so it's the first century, even though it's, year 0, 1, 0, 2, type of thing. So yeah, there's no year 0. Which is another reason why BC and AD always threw me off. There's no year 0. Okay, type of thing. Oh, and anytime people have those weird, stupid end of the world rapture predictions, it's like, but there's no year 0. Okay, you gotta add 1, all right, for it to all work out. So, anyways, okay. Now, starting with what's in your book, okay. Your textbook starts off talking about various creation narratives, and I kind of touched on this before, and I already mentioned we're going to have an assignment that has to do with it. And of course, comparing it to science. And in this case, not to offend anyone's sensibilities, but we are going to look at this strictly, and a lot of events, strictly from a historical viewpoint, okay? We're going to try to leave most of the spirituality out of it. And so some of the things that your textbook points out is, and this is also my experience, that when you look at different creation narratives, and once again, it does not matter, whether it's a Christian narrative or an African narrative or an ancient Chinese narrative, there's always a couple of things in common. Number one, the creation of the universe happened at a specific point. And it was basically like, boom, it happened. There it is. Okay? It just appeared. Whether it was by, whatever. Okay? And typically, and this just as your teacher and as a student of history, a lot of these stories that I've looked at and read, most of them only give the age of the earth, and by extension, the age of the universe, a few thousand years, okay? I think the oldest narrative, or the narrative that gives the oldest age of the earth is literally 10,000 years, and that's it, okay? So that's how long all of this has been happening, okay? Whereas when it comes to science, Well, number one, not only did the creation of the universe happen, and in this case, billions of years ago, but different parts of the earth and different, things happened in the order of millions of years. Okay? And of course, it wasn't just like, boom, it's there, it's done. But there have been changes over time, okay, that have brought us to what we have here and what we see today. Okay, so it wasn't like, someone snapped their fingers and everything just came into existence, the way most creation narratives would have us believe. Okay, and so moving along on that train of thought, okay, because most creation narratives, once again, whether it's the Christian one, whether it's the Maya one, whether it's the African one, when the gods or God created humanity, it was like, I can't snap. Snap! And there he is. Sorry, you're my human. All right, 2 arms, a head, hair, legs, boom. Okay, that's it. Okay, and then we made the female equivalent. Okay, boom. All right. No, humanity evolved. Humanity, things happened, and it didn't just boom. But it takes place over millions, if not billions of years. This isn't an anthropology class. This isn't a microbiology class. This isn't a paleontology class. So I'm not going to get in, first these proteins mixed, and you had your most basic amoeba cell. No, okay? But we're going to jump, okay, from billions of years to about 23 million years ago. All right, that's a couple billions that we're leaping over, okay? And we get a creature known as hominid, okay? You do need to know what this word means. There's going to be a couple H words, okay? The first one is hominids, all right? What is a hominid? A hominid is any primate that 2 legs, a body, 2 arms, a head, okay? So basically humanity and any other primate cousins. Now, hominids are divided into 3 main groups, okay? Group number 1 is the gorilla, okay? And I'm sorry, if I would have thought of it, I would have put up a picture of but I'm sure you've all seen them, right? You've been to zoos, you've watched National Geographic. All right, so number 1, the gorilla, okay? Number 2 are, I can't spell chimpanzee, so I put chimps, okay? But chimpanzees, okay? That is the second group of hominids, okay? Now, finally, and this is the one obviously we're going to focus on, okay? The last group of hominids are humans, and in this case, the technical, the paleontological term for humans is hominins. You do need to know that word. Okay? Hominins. We are all hominins. Okay? Now, just FYI, we're going to get a little deeper into the different types of hominins, okay? Because there were several types. Most of them are extinct, okay? We, you and I, are one very specific type of hominin, okay? Now, what distinguished humans, hominins, from the other hominids, from chimps and gorillas, okay? Well, number 1, hominins, including us, walk on 2 legs. We walk upright, okay? Yes, chimpanzees and gorillas can move on 2 legs, but that is not their dominant form of movement, okay? They still slouch over, they still, kind of use their hands, their knuckles to do things, they use their tails, all right? And so humans are the ones that walk fully erect. Number 2, at some point, millions of years ago, humans were able to not only use fire, okay, but then be able to recreate it, okay? Nobody left a record of, today, big thing from the sky, hit tree, burn good, okay? Because it's warm, it can cook the meat, whatever. So we kind of have to guess. More than likely, that's what happened, okay? Lightning strike. And then, of course, over time, humans realize that, yes, this will keep us warm. Yes, meat tastes way better when you cook it over a fire, okay? Oh, and guess what? We learned how to make it so we don't have to wait for the next lightning storm in order to get a fire, okay? Letter C, humans are the first to be able to use tools, okay? Now, please don't think like Home Depot, power chainsaw, no. Okay, probably the first tools were simple stones or bones that, hey, this actually hurts my hand less if I hit it with a rock as opposed to trying to pound it with my fist, okay? Type of thing. Some of the most important things, though, letter D, hominins, humans, eventually develop different skills, but probably the most important one is language, okay? And while gorillas and chimps can learn a basic vocabulary, okay, it's nothing like what humanity does, all right? And the last thing, of course, is that recognition of self, that you are, in fact, a unique creature, okay? And so that is something that, of course, we haven't asked chimps or gorillas, so we can't tell. But it's one of those things that is unique to humanity, okay? Now, once again, God or the great pumpkin or the magic turtle or whatever you believe in didn't just do this and now we have this, okay? All of this takes place between 23 million years and about 150,000 years ago, okay? So it wasn't like humans discover fire and boom, no. They learned that fire is good, okay? Millions of years later, they realize, oh yeah, when those weird things come from the sky, that's where we know fire is going to be. All right, and then of course, millions of years later, hey, if we hit these rocks together, it makes these little teeny things, and then it'll burn stuff, and then we can make a bigger fire. All right, so that happened over millions of years. Okay, and so you do need to know this E word. Okay, evolution. All right, is what we call that process of not only humans, not only animals, but also plants, okay? And the different changes that they make over the generations, whether it's hundreds of years, thousands of years, or in this case, millions of years, okay? And so the other concept you should know is the concept of natural selection. What does natural selection mean? Just survival of the fittest, okay? There are certain changes to the environment that go on, okay? And over millions of years, the Earth has gone through so many changes. Will you adapt to be able to continue, okay? Obviously, those creatures that could adapt did. And the creatures that could not, then, the creatures that could not are no longer with us, and we study their fossils, and we study, their remnants and whatnot, okay? And that's all it basically is, okay? Now, once again, those changes take place over millions and millions and millions of years, okay? One of the things, and this is, okay, I've heard it, it is not you wake up a chimp one day and then on Friday you're suddenly this, you're a human. Okay, no. Because I've actually had to, well, if evolution's true and we're all here, why are there still monkeys? No, the monkey didn't wake up and suddenly this. Okay? No, it's those changes, and even chimps and gorillas have evolved over time. Okay? And it's that successful adaptation to the environment. All right? Questions, comments? So we've just covered like 23 million years of Earth history. All right? And we get to something like this. Okay? To illustrate it, I do have a quick YouTube video. I love YouTube. All right. And this is a more modern illustration. Some of you maybe have seen this of the peppered moth. Okay. And how, now this is evolution on a much faster scale. Okay. And in this case, remember, it's changes in the environment that lead to it. Whether those changes are natural, okay, you know, just the earth changing, or man-made, which is what kind of we're seeing more often now. So, let me, copyright, I can't record it. So, it's only about 3 minutes.
Is a species of moth found in India. There are two variations of color in a species. Some moths are white with dark speckles, and some moths are dark with light speckles. The peppered moths live in environments with light-colored trees, like birch trees. Which moth do you think has an advantage in this environment? Can you find the moths? There's one more, do you see it? The light-colored moths had an advantage for survival. Their color helped them to blend into their environment and hide from hungry predators like birds. The dark-colored trait was a disadvantage. Moths with this trait were more easily spotted by predators and had a lower chance of survival. Since the light-colored trait had an advantage for survival, it was more commonly seen in the population. This was due to natural selection. Individuals who are best suited for an environment survive longer, reproduce more times, and pass on their genes. Natural selection over many generations can cause noticeable evolutionary changes in a species, and the peppered moth is the perfect example. In the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution took place. Manual labor was taken over by machinery. Factories began to produce goods. These factories were powered by coal. The burning of coal released a lot of pollution. Dark clouds of soot and ash lingered in the air and even settled on the trees. Over time, the once light-colored trees were covered in a layer of dark soot. Which color variation had the advantage after industrialization changed the environment? The dark-colored moths now had the advantage. They were able to blend well into the soiled trees, while the light-colored variation stood out. Light-colored moths were more easily spotted by predators and had a lower chance of survival. They reproduced less often, and the frequency of this trait decreased over time. The dark-colored moths increased in frequency after many successful generations of survival and reproduction. But this story has one more plot twist. It didn't take long for people to realize that air pollution was a major problem. Laws were put into place and factories began to reduce their emissions. The skies were once again clear, and the trees as well returned to their natural light color. As a result, over time, the dark moths decreased in frequency, and the light moths became the more common variation once again. This is evolution by natural selection.
All right. So,
Platinum Plus.
sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, natural selection, survival of the fittest. If you have the necessary mechanism to survive, then your DNA gets passed on, And that's what, the humans or the whatevers become. Okay? If you're eliminated, then you're eliminated. Okay? And so, like I said, whether it's man-made or whether it's a true environmental factor, then yes. Okay? These are some of the things that happen. All right? Now, obviously, like I said, not a paleontology class, not an anthropology class, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time with that. But moving on, when it comes to different forms of hominins, of humans, okay, I am not going to ask you to know all of them. If you want to study paleontology later on, I'm sure you can. But I am going to ask you to remember 3, okay? The first one is Homo habilis, okay? What is important about Homo habilis, or why do I want you to know them? Okay, Homo habilis was the first hominin to use tools, okay? Like I said before, no, they didn't discover a Home Depot and were able to then buy them and properly, no, okay? More than likely, they found a rock that could fit into their hand or that they saw some use to and used it to pound things or, hey, killing that animal is a lot easier with a rock than punching it to death, okay? And so, or if we throw the rock at something, it's a lot safer than if we, try to strangle it from behind, okay? And so Homo habilis was the first hominin to use tools, okay? Homo erectus, okay? What do I want you to remember about them? Okay, number 1, they were the first hominin to fully walk upright, okay? Because remember, that's one of the distinguishing features between humans and other primates. Homo erectus, unlike Homo habilis, and there's a couple of others, yes, they could walk upright for short periods, but then they were still basically this, okay? And so, yeah, Homo erectus, boom, okay? Number 2, we believe, once again, nobody left the writing behind, and all we have are the artifacts, okay, and other evidences. But we believe that they were the first to understand the concept of family, okay? As much as you may love your cats and your dogs and whatever, okay, they don't quite get that their litter mates are their brother and sister. I have a friend who does veterinary work, and I remember one time this lady came in not understanding why one of her cats was pregnant. And it's kind of like, well, cats have sex. And she's like, yes, but I've never let her out. She's never been around, strange cats. And it's like, well, do you have other cats at home? And she's like, well, yeah, it's their litter mates. She has like 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And it's like, well, one of the 3 male cats impregnated her. No, those are her brothers. That's disgusting. Do cats understand this? No, okay? And I have 3 cats. As much as you may love cats, all right, they don't understand that. Same thing with dogs, okay? They don't have that concept in their heads. Homo erectus was the first to understand, wait a minute, we came from the same group type of thing, so I guess we're brother. Now, of course, they didn't have the word for it, but they were the first to understand that idea, okay? Homo erectus was the first to use fire. Now, they're not the ones who discovered how to recreate it, but they're the ones that were like, hey, this burning tree after the lightning storm, if you get close to it, oh my goodness, it's really, really warm. Let's just stay here, okay? Hey, if you put, pieces of meat next to this flame, it tastes a hell of a lot better, okay? And then finally, because of these traits, Homo erectus is the first hominin to move from place to place. not only, following these fires and different foodstuffs, okay, but also realizing that yeah, you kind of have to move around and expose to other people, okay? Now, just FYI, and this is in your textbook, and there it is, okay? When it comes to tools, just because Homo habilis, was the first group to use tools, okay, as, over the thousands and millions of years, the other hominins, Homo erectus realized, hey, if we are able to shape, these very primitive rocks, okay, we can make them pointy and use that to kill animals instead of hitting them with a rock, okay? That makes it a lot faster, more efficient, okay? And then, of course, we're going to get to Homo sapiens right now. They, figured out how to make specialty tools. And, hey, if we put this at the end of a stick and throw it at someone, okay, yeah, much easier to kill things that way than having to go up to it and stab it or something like that, okay? And so, I already mentioned, okay, Homo sapiens, all of us in here are Homo sapiens, okay? None of you are Homo habilis, none of you are Homo erectus, okay? They eventually died out. They eventually went extinct. They became like the peppered moth, all right? There were environmental changes that made it so that they did not survive, okay? Who are Homo sapiens? Well, they first appear about 300,000 years ago, okay? The Earth's been around for millions by this point in time. We've had other groups that have existed. And once again, I'm not giving you all of them, I'm not, okay, then there was Australopithecine, then there was no, okay, Cro-Magnon, and we're skipping all of those, okay? The first Homo sapiens, the first evidence of them is in Africa, okay? About 100,000 years ago, though, we begin to see evidence of Homo sapiens outside of Africa, all right? So it took 200,000 years, all right, for our ancestors, our human ancestors, to wander far enough, all right, that they begin to spread into other parts of the planet, okay? It was Homo sapien that came up with the concept of language. They began to communicate with each other, okay, via words. Now, Mr. Santos, so then how did Homo habilis and Homo erectus and all of the other ones? Grunts, signs, motion. Once again, we can only guess because all we have are artifacts and that's it, basically, okay? So we can only assume, we can only guess at how they communicated to each other. But it's Homo sapiens that first developed the use of language, okay? Most Homo sapiens were hunter-gatherers, okay? We're not very creative with our names, all right? How did they survive? They hunted animals and they gathered whatever food they could find. Apples off of trees, root vegetables, carrots, cucumber, whatever they found in the ground that didn't kill them. All right, okay, let's just eat this. Okay? Fast forwarding. The first Homo sapiens leave Africa about 100,000 years ago. The first Homo sapiens begin to migrate into the Americas 16,000 years ago. So it takes, I can't do math, 84,000 years for humanity to go from the edges of Africa all the way into this continent, okay? So once again, it did not, boom, happen overnight, and there were just millions of humans everywhere, okay? It took a lot of time, all right? Now, as all of this is going on, Are there other hominins still around? Yes. Okay. But little by little, while Homo sapien is thriving, those hominins are slowly dying off, okay? Because they can't adapt to the different changes. And of course, once again, this isn't a paleontology class, so I'm not, well, first there was the Great Ice Age, then the Lesser Ice Age, then okay, well, Homo sapiens was able to adapt to all of those environmental changes. Those other hominins could not. Now, on the previous slide, it does have Neanderthal. We're not going to talk about Neanderthal, but Neanderthal was another group of hominin that coexisted with Homo sapien. Neanderthals are gone. Neanderthals are gone. They've been extinct. But one of the things that they have done is when they've done this DNA mapping, and it's not like the 23andMe, like not that one, but the more intense ones, they have found that there's about 3% of the population that has a teeny tiny bit of Neanderthal DNA. Okay, so what does that mean? Homo sapien intermixed at some point or in some stages with Neanderthal. All right, so even though Neanderthal is extinct, there are some people that have just a teeny bit of that trace DNA. Okay, so as I mentioned, okay, Homo sapien was able to adapt to their surroundings. Okay, whether it was an ice age, whether it was, whatever, they were able to adapt and survive, and that Homo sapien DNA then was able to be passed on. Okay, in order to survive, Homo sapien not only developed, the necessary tools, but they developed certain cultural beliefs, certain practices. Okay, they realized that when the sun was at a certain level in the sky, it was going to start to get colder. So let's start saving things. Okay, or they knew that when certain weather happened, hey, we are about to be surrounded by a lot of water. So, let's start doing things to keep from drowning. And so on and so forth. Or they know that when the temperatures started to get warm again, that there would be food in the bushes and on the trees, or that there would be more animals. So let's start hunting more, okay? And of course, Homo sapien had a much larger brain than some of these other hominins. Okay, and it is that larger brain that allowed them to develop this intellectual capacity to look at things, notice patterns, and then create whatever they needed to be able to adjust to those things. Okay, because if you know that there's going to be warm weather coming because you notice that now there's a little bit of green on the trees, then yes, you start getting ready, because that means that there's going to be birds. And when there's birds, there's going to be like gazelles and other animals. And we can start hunting and we can start eating again. Okay, type of thing. All right. Now, as I warned you on Wednesday, I love maps. So I'm going to throw in maps into my PowerPoints. This map just shows, just to give you a visual illustration. I'm more of a visual person. So here, it just basically gives you then a visual illustration of how humanity migrated. Okay, as I said, Homo sapiens began in East Africa around 300,000 years ago. Between 200 and 150,000, they spread throughout Africa. Okay, and then eventually, 100,000 years ago, began to leave those areas and move through the various continents. Okay. Now, Mr. Santos, your slide said 16,000, but that map says 15. Okay. Once again, prehistoric. Do we actually have record? Yeah. Grodd was here. I crossed over from Siberia to Alaska. No. Okay, we don't. So once again, from the artifacts that they've left behind, we're taking our best guess, and if we're off by about 1,000 years, well, in the grand scheme of history, that's not too much. All right. So, but yes, okay, the spread of humanity. All right. Now, we're gonna finish off today just talking about Homo sapiens and those things then that allowed them to survive while other hominins became extinct. Okay, as I mentioned, Homo sapien was the first to be able to develop language, to take what is up here and share it. Okay? Now, maybe Homo erectus noticed that. I mean, they're the ones that discovered fire. Maybe they noticed that when those bolts from the sky came down and hit things, there would be a fire there, so let's go. Okay? But they didn't have the language, so I'm going, okay? Hey, we just had a lot of those things from the sky. I bet if we follow them, we can find some fire. All right, you down? Yeah, okay. And so, yeah, all right. And then later on over time, Homo sapien does learn how to recreate it, so we don't have to rely on nature. And of course, you know, okay, just so you can live after I'm dead, all right, you find 2 of these gray things and just hit them, okay? And you're gonna see these little things come out, but that's not enough. You have to take some of this over here and punch. It's just like a giant lightning strike, but on a mini level, okay? I suck at creating fires without like those pre-made fire starters. Okay, I couldn't do it with just rocks or sticks or whatever. I've actually seen people, all right? So I would have died out with the Homo erecti, okay, type of thing, or I would have been one of the Homo sapiens that died, okay? As I said, Homo sapiens were predominantly hunter-gatherers, okay? And, you know, if I ask you, so how did they live? They hunted animals, they gathered food, okay? Now, from once again, because nobody left written records, but from the artifacts, from the ruins, from archaeological sites, okay, we can guess that most of these Homo sapien groups were small, probably limited to like 1 or 2 families, okay, to be able to move around quickly, because unfortunately gazelles and zebras and elks and all of that stuff, you know, they don't tell, oh, hey, human, we're just going to walk slowly in front of you. All right, so you want a group that can move quickly, okay? From what we've been able to gather, all right, the men hunted, all right? They were in charge of chasing down these animals, and it was the women that went out and gathered whatever fruits, vegetables, roots that, you know, then could be eaten by humans. All right. So yeah, that's how humanity lived for hundreds of thousands of years. And probably the reason why, I promise I'll come back. Okay. And for me, I just use apples because it's easier. And I'm gonna open this real quick because yes, there is a tree. It's not an apple tree, okay? But let's pretend it is, all right? There's apples on that tree, and so we are picking the apples and eating them. What happens when all the apples are gone? We good. Okay, so what do we have to do? Not save and store them. Okay, move. Oh, we're not there yet. That's a couple thousand years more. We move to the next tree with apples. Okay, this is why we see this happening. Okay, people just kept moving on and on. All right. Hey, we have killed all of the deer in this area, guys. So what are we gonna do now? Move for what? Yeah, look for more. We're gonna hunt more. Okay. Yeah, you know, our main hunter over here says, I saw like 3 of them run over those hills. Then let's go over those hills. And then over the next hill. And then, you know, 30,000 years later, we end up somewhere where it's, oh, mad cold. Or no, wait, you kids say mad brick? Yes? Did I say that right? All right. You guys are right. sound like my dad. All right, so yes, okay, Homo sapien, that's what made them move to different places. It wasn't like, you know what, I really want to see what Florida looks like. No, they just kept following the animals and the plants, okay? We ate all these apples, let's go to the next tree. We killed all the deer here, well, Grog here said he saw some over the horizon, let's go over the horizon and see if we can find more, okay? The last thing, and this is, once again, probably the biggest thing that makes Homo sapien unique, okay? They are the first to have any real, that's not to say that other hominin groups didn't attempt it, but to have, a real understanding of the things around them. And because they had no writing, because, language is limiting, they developed art. They developed very primitive paintings. And so this is why we know just a little bit more about Homo sapien, because even though they didn't have writing, they were able to tell their stories through drawings, okay? Probably and it's in your textbook, one of the most famous examples, there's several in Europe, are the caves of Altamira, which is in Spain. What does that look like? A bull, yes, okay? And this is just one. There's a whole herd, and then it actually shows people hunting, all right? So this is kind of where we get the idea that they were hunter-gatherers, all right? And yes, and also all of the semi-stick people were all men, all right? So okay, then it was the men who hunted, type of thing. So once again, this kind of tells a story, and we're able then to piece things better, okay, as to what they did. All right? I told you we were going to get to the planting and all that, but we're going to do that on Monday, okay? Because now we enter a whole new era. We enter a game changer for humanity. All right? So we're going to stop right here.